and welcome to episode 121 of the Blood Brothers podcast. Tonight, we're still Sean and Robless. They're off enjoying their holidays. But I've drafted in Mr. Jonathan Whitelaw again. Hello.
Thank you very much. Again, delighted to be here. 3 in a row. I made reference in the last time that I was on here that I was becoming part of the furniture. I was that mouldy old chair that nobody can ever get round to throwing out. I kind of feel that mould has now spread, and perhaps a table, maybe even a bed. I'm becoming an integral part of the household, and you're never getting rid of me. There we go. Delighted to be here.
That's toxic beauty right there. I like that.
Thank you. It comes with the territory, right? I'm meant to be a writer. I'm meant to at least pretend that I'm a writer, but there we go. Yeah. Thank you very much. You can stay, Caroline. You can stay.
I think at any festival appearance from now on, you should be known as like the mold spreader or
I'm sure I'm called worse by editors and publishers and agents and things like that when I'm not in the same room. And
it would be great if that was the actual name that they use.
It's like the worst wrestling gimmick ever, right?
And I mean, our guest tonight is New York Times bestseller, Caroline Kepnes. Hello.
Yep. Yes. Hello.
I was nervous about the name there because I forgot to check before, but
I love that moment. Yes.
You can see the fear in my eyes.
It's like Loch Ness.
Nice.
That was great.
Nicely done.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here, and I love that we're all in different time zones, and it's I don't know. It's like
we are.
Yes.
You two are pretty close, aren't you? And then I'm in the future.
You are in the future. We're an hour apart. An hour and the Rocky Mountain range between us, I think, is what it is. Because Caroline, you're in Los Angeles.
Yep.
I'm in Alberta, and Chris, you are in Blighty, aren't you?
I am, unfortunately. So, Caroline, you have a new book coming out imminently, don't you?
I do, yes. And over there, it's this Thursday.
Oh, exciting! So we can put this out on
April 25th.
Oh,
I was just reminded to I don't know, the calendar ever since pandemic, I just can't get it right. It's a part of my brain that kind of worked to not think about calendars and time, just is very stubborn and is like, no.
Yeah, well, we can. A little trick that I've found, I'm going to tell the listeners now, is if we say today when we're discussing stuff and I put it out on publication day, it sounds like we're doing it on publication day. So we'll pretend this is Thursday and not Monday.
Okay, now we're really in the future. I like it.
We are, yeah.
Yes. I don't know if I'm coming or going now. I'll be honest. I'll just trust you guys. You seem to know what you're talking about. So we'll go.
Just pretend
if we all got killed in the next couple of days, everyone would be alive when it airs. So it's got to be really
what a legacy! What a legacy that would be. Yeah, just as I planned it.
Yeah,
liars. Yes.
So today is publication day,
it is.
Which is really exciting. Please, could you tell us a little bit about your newest book?
Yeah, well, for the publication day thing, it amazes me. It never gets old. Like I turn into a 5-year-old when the books arrive in the mail, like every step of the process. It's my favorite part of this, one of my favorite parts. But this one, Joe Goldberg has spent his pandemic writing a book and kind of resolving his issues with his past relationships. And he's also used his downtime to find a writer who's very successful and kind of win over that writer. And he gets himself into a writing fellowship at Harvard. And on the website, they promise that it's going to be undiscovered writers. And it is not that way. But fortunately, like there are many successful people. And there is one woman who's like Joe, and her name is Wonder, and she works in customer service, and she didn't go to college. So obviously this is his soulmate. And now it's not enough for him to be named the next J.D. Salinger. She needs to be the queen to his king. And, you know, if you know Joe, like everything goes really well. Nobody gets hurt. She's very on board with his plan. She happens to do everything that he wants her to do, and off they go.
Beautiful. And this is the 4th in the series, isn't it?
Oh my God, yeah, yes.
Does that feel weird?
It's weird because when I was writing the first one, like I didn't plan it. So it all just kind of like when I was writing the first one, it was an addiction and I just wanted to do another. And then when the publisher, I wanted to do more after that. So it's still like a miracle to me that it's 10 years with this motherfucker. And I still like it. So I hope everyone's still like into reading it, because I'm like, maybe there's just something wrong with me that like the writing of it is very like comforting to me. And now it's one of my happy places. So I hope that this goes for people who have the book today too.
Yes. Well, I'm sure it will.
That's
I'm sure
interesting
it
that
will.
you say, Caroline. You know, we live in we live as writers in a world where series are massive. It's always the really it's always good, right, as a writer to have a series. Obviously, not every writer feels that way, and a lot of writers are do prefer working in sort of standalone market. Has your attitude towards writing a series, has that changed in the 10 years that you've been doing it? You know, are you still as excited when you sit down to a new project in the series as you were pre 2014? It was you was out 2014,
right.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like writing in 2013. I feel like every book, whether it's in a series or not, has this like, you kind of have a moment of, I've done this, I know how to do this. And then no, you don't know how to do anything. And it's the blank page, and it's the figuring out why and what am I doing here and what is this. So each one has its own little nightmare. And then once you start to figure things out and kind of give into what you don't know and allow it to like some of it to come to you, like I do a lot of planning almost so that I can throw it the fuck out the window. But I'm that like I need that comfort zone of like,
Yeah.
especially in a series, because with writing, like I'm a big rewriter and I write fast and long. So I get to that point of like, I know I've done this before, but I don't know if it was in the final book, but it's real in my head. And I have to look and make sure. So yeah, each one I want to give everyone something new. I want to like mess with him in a way that I haven't before. So yeah, each one, like, I feel like for me anyway, the stakes feel a little higher because I'm like, oh, you have to find a reason to go on. And the way that he's not like a detective, he's not an FBI agent, he's not saving the world. And he doesn't have like a traditional, like role to step into. So I have to invent that role. And that's the fun part that's hard, but I feel like it's like everything, like the hard stuff is fun, Like I was excited to realize, oh my God, in some ways, him being in a small room with fiction writers who have more success than he does is like, why didn't I do this in the first one? So I like that feeling. When I get that, I'm like, okay, I'm going somewhere good. Yes.
One thing that I always like to ask when I'm on this show, and the guests have been on it obviously before, is that planning. It takes a lot to plan these things, particularly the further you get in a series. How do you keep track of it? Have you got spreadsheets galore? Have you got databases online? Is it written notes? Is it notebooks? How do you keep track of it?
I don't. I'm just basically a slob, and I have like I do wonder how people did this before computers, right? Because I can look at the digital version of a book and search for any name, for any turn of phrase. My other fear is plagiarizing myself, because when I get into his head and that voice and I'm like, I want him to sound like him, but that little bell will go off. And now I have to, like, every book it changes. Like with the second book, I kind of wrote it right after the first one, so I didn't really go through this. But with the third one, it was like, okay, I wrote those two a few years ago. And now with this one, it was like, okay, now there are fucking three of them. Like 1,200 pages of published, plus the thousands of pages that weren't published. And the dead bodies. So it's, and like, I feel like there's a moment in this book when he feels guilty because he's thinking of all the people that crossed his path that died tragically. And he forgets one, and she's kind of the type that would be forgotten. And so he feels bad about that. And that comes from me. That's a moment where I'm like, oh, sometimes it lines up where it works. Cause like, he doesn't think of himself as the reason these people died, So, and also like, she was just that was her problem, not his.
No. Did you see it as a series from book one?
No, just an addiction. Like I wrote the first one. I had lost my father. My whole life was just basically just a mess, a wreck. And writing this voice was just my comfort zone. It was like I was hypnotizing myself and escaping and getting to naturally thank so many songs and books and things that I love. And I love doing it. So, and every book feels like it somehow leads to the next one. So in that way, with the first one, it was like, well, of course I'm bringing him to LA. And then after all of that careerism and kind of getting caught up in the industry, it was like, well, yes, now in the Joe way, he's going to a small place to have a small life, which seems to suit a lot of people. And that book ended with him in Florida. And I did have that moment of like, I loved him as this bartender bookstore. Like, I want to go there to the Empathy Bordello that he has. But I started writing it and was like, no, we need to get through this so he can be in a new natural response to the last book, which is that like, in You Love Me, he felt like he couldn't catch up to people because he meets a woman who has a child. He wants to get rid of the husband so he can just be the stepfather, because he'd be better at it. And in this book, it was like the same theme always with Joe, that like he just can't seem to get a break. So even when he gets one, like he gets into this fellowship and he only has to kill one person to get there, which is pretty good. But then immediately he's insecure. They're kind of assholes. They bring out the asshole in him. You don't know what he's projecting. And yeah, like I always want him in a world that he's like a millimeter away from fitting in. And that millimeter just becomes a mile because of, well,
life,
because of him, but because according to him, because of other people. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. And please, could you just give us a little sort of run up to your first publication? Like, did you always want to be a writer?
Always. I was that little kid, like when I wrote a short story, I even made the cover as if it was a book, like took it very seriously, like just dreamed of it. And then in high school, I wrote a short story, and I don't know if you guys know Sassy Magazine, but it was the coolest magazine. It had a brother magazine called Dirt eventually. Sassy was just like, especially back then, like it came once a month, and it was this miracle into like the real world, the world out there that was far from where I was before the internet. So I sent them this short story, and they gave me an honorable mention and a typewriter, and they created a monster, like just an absolute monster, where I was like, this is fucking magic, right? And the woman who was running it was Christina Kelly, one of my writing idols at the time. So all of it just like that stayed with me. But that it always comes back to just making stuff up, like, and also the way that I read stuff, it makes me want to make stuff up. Like everything I feel like is a response. I hear a song that makes me cry, I want to write something like to get those tears into something. I laugh at something, I remember that laughter. Like I feel like that's just a big part of my process, is like a giant love letter. So with that first book, I'd written and published many short stories, but every time I went to write a novel, something happened where I was like turned into someone else, very like it was raining that night, and it just it didn't work. And I was so at that point when I was in the kind of bottom place, as far as I was like, well, fuck it, I'm just going to be myself, and I'm going to have all my pop culture references that I would try to like, that I would self-judge and think of them as like not appropriate for a novel. And I just went with it and just leaned into it instead of trying to like write a novel.
Yeah.
I thought of it as like that first chapter is a short story, and I got to find a reason to write another and another and another. And yes, I don't know if I answered.
What was that, Caroline? What was it what was that barrier? What was it that was making it so different for you to write the novel as opposed to the short story? Was it the length of the novel? Was it just the sheer size of it? What was it?
I feel like it's all of it. Like to me, like it's like kind of you go into a bookstore and you're overwhelmed because there's so many books, like so many books. You can't read all of them. And I always had that feeling and that kind of love of knowing that each book means that someone finished it, and that like all the work that went into it on so many levels for so long. And it was just very intimidated. Like I kind of had it on a pedestal. Yeah. And was kind of denying myself the like, fuck it, just get it out of your system. Don't try and make it come out perfect. Just kind of try and think of it in that way. Like short stories were a comfort zone because to me, like the smaller, the more control you feel like you have of like what you're trying to do, you naturally edit and cut, and it's very pointed and it's a contained little piece of art. But a book, like you want it to have layers and more scope, and that kind of overwhelmed me. And again, just enough of like thinking like that novelist that I admire was like, no, that imposter syndrome was pretty,
It's really fascinating. Actually, it's really fascinating to hear you say that, because I do a lot of workshops and things like that here in Canada and Alberta, and I hear that all the time. I hear that intimidation factor of it, and in a sort of roundabout way, I wrote a short story for a magazine in the UK at the start of this month, and I found it really hard because I only had 1,800 words, and I found it really almost impossibly difficult to do. Thankfully, got a really good editor, and she helped out greatly. But it's the other way around. Like I almost feel like I've got that comfort blanket by having 90,000 words to go into these things. But when you're exactly as you say, when you've got to chop it down and edit it, and you've got such a tight space for to get everything in there, it's, you know, a short story, it is everything, right? It is completely condensed. It's so tight. I find that really, really intimidating. I find it really, really hard to do. And yeah, I do. I hear it a lot.
I think that with a short story too, it's like, you know, that you're going to move on. You don't think you're like, some stories I'll go back to and spend years kind of thinking about. But in general, like you said, if you're doing it for a specific, like page count, a word count, there is this sense that you're building something so that you will go build something else and kind of learn from it. And a novel, to me, when you haven't written one, or when you've written ones that we don't discuss, like has a large, it's a longer, more like, you know, just a longer process. And then I had worked as a journalist, and I remember like being cocky and young, like, oh, a 300-word review, like, and then like, no, like 8 rounds of edits, because you're right, like you have 300 words. So I always go back to that when I'm writing my books, and it doesn't mean I'm good at it, but I love that outlook that like less is more, like pretend that you do only have a certain amount of words. And yeah.
Have you obviously you're a hugely successful novelist now. Is it something that you find easier to do when you sit down to start a new project, or do you still feel that way? Do you still feel that intimidation factor, or are you more confident in in where you are as a writer?
I think I know myself a little better. Like I know that I will do my stream of consciousness, rambling pages upon pages, and I will let myself do it. And I know myself also that I will get almost high on that, because you know how there's that difference between the way writing makes you feel and how much you love it and what's there. And I'm self-aware that I'm like, someone else will read this and be like, so 70 pages, like, is anything going to happen ever? Or are people going to talk to each other, you know? And I know that, but I'm like, okay with that. And I know that that's part of my process. I feel like you just get to know yourself a little better. You don't really change or get better, but you know what the things you're going to do, you know, like the same way, like if you say, I'm going to have one drink, you know, I'm like, I'm going to do a stream of consciousness for a couple pages. I'm like, no, it's going to be like 20. And yeah.
And how long is your sort of like, what does your writing day look like?
That's changed, where now I'm one of those people, which I never thought I would be, where it's a morning thing. Like, just weird. That happened during pandemic, I think, from sleep becoming such an impossible task. And then waking up like, you know, so relieved that that was over, or like also the dread of like the hours spread out before you. And I just kind of stuck with that, because I've read, I mean, a lot of writers that I've read about have said that over the years, like that morning brain, you know, before you've kind of like ingested stuff in the world. I like when you sleep on something, you have an idea. Also, it makes me like, feel like I keep, if I say the word addict one more time, but then if I've gotten something done in the morning and I tell myself, for your own good, you have to like move about the cabin, you have to go do something else. I feel like I like having that come back to me, that like scratching feeling of, no, I have more. I want to know, I want to do more, as opposed to like, if I don't write in the morning, then all day the guilt is there, the easy fucker procrastinating, and it's just an awful thing. This way, it's like, oh, it's like those people that exercise in the morning. I understand them now.
And
I don't. That's still bad.
I don't.
The last thing I want to do.
I tried to do that a few years ago, and I look back on that time like, who was that? Like, I was in my car in the morning at a gym, and I think that was body snatcher stuff, but you know.
So you said you never sort of envisaged it as a series, but how was it during the writing of the first book that you thought, actually there's legs in this?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like, I guess when people started to read it, it helped too. Like my family was reading it first, my mom and her sisters, led to many interesting conversations about, you know, blowjobs and boys, and it was like, this is good family bonding material. But it did feel like he definitely like was a product of this time. And in that way, like I love, you know, all different kinds of books, but I really love books, especially that can capture the culture of a moment. So I did feel like, okay, I've got this good, fun character to put in the world of everyone sharing everything. like the antisocial guy with all of it. And I feel like in the basic sense, like that loneliness that he had, I liked feeling like his problem is that that loneliness like is all that he has, and he will always find his way back to that. And that made me feel like, okay, I can go on with this because it's painful. Like, yes, he's a sicko. There's the fun of like, there's so many different parts of it. It was like, yes, he's so much fun to write. So in a selfish way, it was like, yeah, I just want to keep going. But that he does things that we kind of casually do, but takes them to a new level. And then he made me self-conscious of things that I do, like whenever I like look someone up or like look a little too close into the comment, like all of it, the shady little things we all do, and we're not killers. But I liked that part of it and felt like, yeah, we'll keep him alive. Yeah.
Very glad you did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we echo a worldwide audience when we say very glad that you did, Caroline. Yeah, absolutely. Here.
And then I was wondering, because the TV series came in 2018, if I remember right. And
yes.
Did you have any, like, are you part of that?
In the beginning, it was great. Like I'd written the first 2 books, and they very graciously, first of all, they just knew what they want. Like they got it. They had such vision. They're like both experts, Sarah Gamble, Greg Berlanti, like, they do many wonderful things, and they had strong vision and things that I was passionate about. Like I remember Greg saying, we're going to call them Joe's thoughts in the script. And it was like, okay, because I remember thinking, what are they going to do? Because for me, that all takes place in his head, where it's the internal. I'm like, oh, if I wrote a script, it would be like voiceover page 1 and then 1,000 pages later, like, So they invited me into the room, and I wrote an episode, and that was a great experience. And then as naturally things happen, like they were going to go in a slightly different direction as I was about to go write 2 more U-books. And I would love to be one of those people with like good mental boundaries who could have like gone into the room and lived in this Joe in Love world that they were doing, gone home, kind of meditated or whatever, and gone to my books. But I was like, I can't do that. So I took a step back, because I also didn't want to, like, you get to a point where they're on a journey. I'm on a journey. Like I want them to keep going with the things that they're doing, and then I keep going with my thing. And I like that.
Yeah. And I mean, do you watch the newer ones?
Yes. Event, like I let myself like I can't watch it when I'm writing, because it's my other fear of like, oh my god, if we're both doing the same thing or what.
Yeah.
A little bit, but I like that element of like, it's like just a very surreal present to get, like someone, like as if like this is my toy and now they have a toy, and I like to see the games we choose to play with that toy.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, do they still feel like your characters? Does it still feel like does it still feel like the world and the characters that you've created and you started that journey? Because obviously, exactly as you just said there, you all started on the one path. They've gone down one route and you're carrying on down the other. Does it still feel, when you sit down and watch it, does it still feel like it's yours in a way?
I mean, by this point, like I feel like, oh, the heart of it. And I like to see the way they've let him grow and change. And I feel like there are like 2 different Joes. Like they're both Joe, but I like to imagine if they met, like, I feel like books are just different. And it's a little dirtier, a little nastier, a little more everything, because you can be, because that's part of your seducing the reader into like going along with it. And in a show, you're looking at him, and it's just completely different. So I I think it's so interesting what we are okay with looking at and what we're okay with reading. Like all of it, like in the meta dork way, I like thinking about that stuff.
Is Penn, I'm talking like he's my mate, just Penn. Is he how you imagined Joe?
Yeah, I remember early on, or I don't know, a couple of years ago, I remember him saying that like he thought of Joe as really constipated. And that felt right. And he was like, it's like there's this stick up my ass. And it was like, yes, that, just not having thought much about Joe's bowel movements, it was like, God, that does like the emotional constipation I've thought about. But I liked the idea of him kind of bringing that physicality to it. And yeah, he absolutely gets it. And I feel spoiled because I have him, and then Santino Fontana, this Tony winner who does the audiobooks, is fantastic. So that's another like fucking double Christmas every time.
Oh, that's really nice. And I was reading a thing recently. There's a UK author, and I can't quite remember her name. Her debut came out a few weeks ago, and she was saying like it didn't feel exciting or how she thought it would feel. It felt very like flat and sort of all the hard work she'd done didn't really amount to that moment. Whereas talking to you, it feels like
Well, I'm
you love
past that
everything.
too, though. I remember that. I feel like it's postpartum. Like I have a friend with
Yeah.
a book coming out this week, and we've been talking about that. Like it's almost, and I remember Bill Novak, he's a great comedy writer, once said to me, like, I was so excited. And he was like, it's like the quietest day of your life. And I'm thinking, no, like, he's like, your book is out there and people are just walking around. They're just walking around like the world didn't change. Because then you're kind of facing, of course, like it's this monumental day in the way that, like anything in any job, when you have this big day, you're aware of that day on the calendar for months and months and months. So I do think there's a postpartum, and I think everyone goes through a degree of that in their own way. And it's the same way, like to me, when you walk into a bookstore, you want to see your books. If you see a ton of them, there's a moment of look at all that stock. And then it goes to like, no one's buying it. If you see other like, I'm a loser. And then it goes to maybe everyone just came in and bought all of them. So it's like, to me, it's a constant like dance of interpretation and moods. Yeah. And definitely like the mood swings of a book release, a debut release to me are, yeah. Mm-hmm. And in this world, my friends and I always fantasize about the 90s because that's when I was like really wanting to be a writer. And to me, like that book comes out, you're at some dive bar in New York, like smoking indoors and just like being an author. And now with the internet, it's just also different. Like you can look at your like all these things that you wouldn't have been able to do that you can do now, like looking at that sales rank or Evil Goodreads, like all of it is just there and it doesn't help. Yeah. That's
Caroline,
what this is about a lot too.
What do you prefer on publication day or indeed any day? Do you prefer to go into a bookstore and there's none on the shelf, or do you prefer when there's loads and loads of stock? What's your preference?
I want the best of both worlds. I want to go in and not see it and like get down, get up, like someone bought them all and get shy and then go see them and turn red, like, oh, there they are. And then go back into like, oh, no one's buying them. I like the emotional roller coasters. Like I bring it, you know?
Fantastic.
Do you have a publication day like thing that you do?
I really don't. Like, I guess the last time I did this was 2021, so it was all indoors. Very strange that way of like, because it was doing things like this, and then you hang up the Zoom and you're like, it's book day. Like usually there's an event that night and a party, and it was just very like strange. This time I'm so excited. I have an event that night with a good friend of mine, and I feel like it's my first in-person event since, I don't know, like 2020, I think, early 2020. So I'm very excited to have that tradition back because that makes it, I like those in-person events too for book releases because it's that thing when everyone gets something out of it just by going. They get to see people, they're in a bookstore, they get their flirt on, get this book or maybe another book. Like it's just all of that this is all great, but that's great too. And yeah.
Your book launches sound fantastic, Caroline. Nobody's ever got their flirt on at any of my launches. It's like, can I get a ticket? Can I get a ticket to one of yours? Sounds great. Sounds fantastic.
It's weird. Like I know of 2 couples that met through these books and got married and are like, as far as I know, one was still married. But like I was like, wow, this is, and I feel like there might even be more than 2, but it was, I don't know. I mean,
long may it continue. Keep writing books. That's the trick, right? Yeah. I know what you mean, though. I know I was doing an event last week, and we got chatting about it afterwards. And I was speaking with the booksellers, and it's just really, really nice to all be in the one room again. Yeah. I know it's things have kind of changed a little bit, certainly over the last 18 months. But after the years that we've had, and in particular, I think book people, I think writers and obviously bookstores and things like that, I think it took a real hit, and I think people are just very, very slowly getting back to some sense of normality with it, and it's really, really nice to all be in the one room. And exactly as you say, I think you put that really, really well, put that really nicely, that the book launch, everyone gets something out of it.
It's
I like
not
that.
because like this, when it's the 3 of us, when everyone you're with we can look at each other, it's one thing. But when you do those online launches and you're only like talking to one person and you can't, I just love that eye contact, getting the vibe of what people are interested in, the reactions, the like in time reactions. So I think that's what's hard about those. Like they're great. I feel like they saved a lot of publishing and a lot of books, and it's good we have them. But yeah, when you're in the room, like,
there's a crackle, isn't there?
Yes.
With your pop culture references, I'm gonna ask a question that I hate, but what are your like top three films?
Oh my God. That changes. Okay, so first of all, I just saw something the other day. I'm gonna sound like that real LA asshole that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but you'll know because eventually when I'm allowed to, I will be screaming. It's my favorite movie in years. I love it to death. I down to the last frame. This to me, it's so rare that down to the last few seconds, you're not sure. You know what I mean? Like just
Right.
phenomenal, beautiful, like every part, every single aspect of it was there, was remarkable. I'm so excited. So that's I get like this, like I get on something and then I'm, like obsessed. But
Is
the
is
one
it the third of a trilogy?
no,
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 okay.
Give us a clue. Give us a clue,
original.
Caroline. Give us a clue.
Let's see.
Also, don't put yourself in any sort of like
Yeah.
legal wrangling, for
I know,
goodness
I'm
sake.
like,
We don't want the cops breaking down the door.
yeah, murder.
Okay.
A really big clue, I know.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Nice.
I know. That's it. You guys know what it is.
When it comes out, can you message us to be like, this is what I
Yes,
was
yeah.
talking about?
Oh, absolutely. No, and I feel like I'll be able to talk about it like soon, but
Okay.
like in the next couple of months, like long before it comes out, and I will tell you. Yeah. But the movies I go back to, like, I feel like if you asked me tomorrow, they would be different. But like right now, like when I need to cry, Terms of Endearment almost fascinates me because no matter what, that's a guaranteed cry. Like, and it reminds me of being in college. I took a class called Sentimentalism, like a complete analytical class about exactly what it sounds. And I remember like we're all in the dark watching ET and I'm sobbing and they turn the lights on and everyone, you're not like the whole point was to like think about the mechanisms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck it. Like I'm a yes. And I love oh my God. I go on kicks with the Fast and Furious movies that those like the early one, like Fast Five, especially, which I feel like I referenced 800 times in Hidden Bodies, is one that fills me with nostalgia. I go back to Hannah and her sisters is one that I love because I feel like it brings me back to being a wide-eyed child and like seeing New York and hearing all this music that I didn't know and like making me want to just be an adult already. And Magnolia, but Paul Thomas Anderson stuff I love. Walking and Talking is like those talking movies I'll go to a lot. Like Please Give is something I've watched a few times lately. Yeah, I'm sorry you said three. This is not
No, that was great.
You have to only... I'll just rattle every fucking movie.
It's only okay when you name good movies. That's the trick. You can go beyond the three if they're all great.
Do you guys have like hardcore favorite things, or do you feel like they change? Like things that like you would have tattooed that are like, this is my forever like.
Weirdly, for movies, as Chris will attest, I hate everything. Right, that's how I start. That's how I go into things where I know I'm going to hate it. There'll be something that I hate about this, and then very rarely do I get into the position where actually I completely reverse Percy with that, do a 180. And the biggest and best one that I did recently was Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it was before the Oscars. It was before all the Oscar success. It was only a couple of weeks ago or whatever it was before the Oscars came on. And it came up as a suggested for you on Prime. I think it is. I think it's on Amazon Prime. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to sit down and watch it. And I put it on and I didn't move, as in I didn't budge for the 2 hours that it's on, 2 hours, 10 minutes or whatever it is. I genuinely didn't budge. I thought it was absolutely fantastic and genuinely moved from being completely obscure to it. Because again, another thing that I hate is when I'm getting told all the time by the media to watch something.
That makes me allergic to something. And then it makes me like, I back up like, well, no, exactly. I'm not. Like, stop telling me to watch that. When I get those like from Netflix, like my favorite, when Netflix first of all tells me to watch you, I'm like, oh fuck you. But when they're like, this is for you, I'm like, you don't know my algorithm, like you don't know me.
But you're right, and the more it happens, and the more, particularly around award season and things like that, particularly a film that was nominated so much, that normally completely turns me off. And I don't know what it was. I just for whatever reason, I got completely sucked into it, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was really, really well done. The acting in it's fantastic. And it's moved from being completely obscure all the way up to I think I've told you, Chris, it could be, I think it's maybe my top 10, maybe even in my top 5 But you're right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll watch something tonight, and that'll suddenly get in my top 5 and move that away.
Mine has been In Bruges for like.
Oh my god, I love In Bruges, and I finally saw Banshees and loved it so much that it was another. It ended. I just started watching it again.
See, I had a really very visceral thing where I loved In Bruges so much that because I sort of don't look at the news and stuff or like entertainment, so I didn't really know what to expect. So I went in kind of expecting In Bruges 2, and I was really pleased it wasn't that. But I walked out of the cinema and like I drove home in silence, and that never happens. Just thinking, and I was like, did I like it or didn't I? And then I rewatched it, and I was like, it is actually incredible.
I love that moment too, because a lot of times for me, like it happens with a lot of things. I start reading something and I have a visceral reaction, and sometimes it's very negative. Like I don't like I'm mad at this almost, and then I realize, oh, it's because I love it, and there's something about it that. And I don't know why, like that's like it takes my brain has to cycle through this. It's okay, like you can have it. And
yeah, it's a strange thing, but yeah, I really enjoyed that. At this point, would you like to play a little game?
Yes.
Okay, so
did anyone ever say no?
No, but some people have looked wary and then not enjoyed the game.
It's the way you say it, right? It's the way you say it. The way you said that there. I mean, we all know it's coming, right? But it's the way you said it. It was like something out of Saw.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Maybe I should
you need to work in your
it.
delivery, Chris. I think.
Yeah. I go lock my door.
What I need is like an upbeat jingle instead of me sort of.
Yeah. Would you like to play a game?
Yes, the jingle will be beautiful.
Yeah, there we go. There's where my week's going. Okay, so the 1-star superstar game is I've looked at someone that's given you a 1-star review. I've looked at what else they've reviewed, and you have to tell me whether it's 1-star or 5-star. Okay, so Jonathan, Caroline, I've got two things. So it could be a draw, could be a resounding victory for one of you. The first one is Christmas ornaments that are little. I think they're called gonks. Like little gnome men.
Oh
no!
With like the hat sort of over their heads.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, and you can just see their nose and the beard and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay.
So it's an 8-pack of differently attired gonks. Is that a 1-star or a 5-star?
Caroline, you go first. Ladies first.
I'm my gut is going to be 5 stars.
Okay. Any reason?
Because each one has a different outfit, right? Like that's an assortment. I think that they have options there and variety. Whereas I just think my book is just this one motherfucker who doesn't shut up for pages. Whereas the little gnomes, that you can match your mood to it.
Yeah, that's fantastic reasoning.
Automatic logic, but yeah.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to go 1-star, but I think that variance is perhaps I think that's the hubris that's undone it. I think the gonks have been undone by their own hubris in that there's too much variety. Okay. And also, if they've given Caroline 1-star, like, come on,
what taste do they have?
No taste, exactly.
Well, Caroline gets 0.1. It is a 5-star review.
Oh my god! Oh, I'm excited.
Marvelous value for money. They really liked the differently attired gonks. They were well made and super cute. The more gonks, the merrier.
That's not real. You've made that up.
Did you go on and review that just for this game?
Yeah.
Show us the gonks.
C McDonald, user C McDonald.
Yeah. The more gonks, the merrier is notoriously my catchphrase.
That'll be your jingle. Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
I should just have like the best lines from like the worst reviews, I guess.
Like,
yeah, it is.
That is a disturbed individual.
It is. Blimey.
The next one is a welcome mat for outside your door.
Okay.
What
are we getting
saying?
Any more descriptions as to what the mat's like? Is it non-themed? Is it Christmas themed?
No, it's the thing is non-slip and dirt trapping.
Oh, right, okay. Caroline, you go first again.
On this, I'm going to go
the honor's yours.
Because I feel like there's going to be a disappointment with something that has a job to do. Like if it says specifically that mat is going to trap that dirt, it's not going to trap it enough for this reader / boot. Walker. Yeah, like
That makes sense. I'm buying that. Again, I'll play devil's advocate just to try and tie things up, and I'll say 5-star. And I'll say 5-star, not just to be a contrarian, but because they clearly like everything but Caroline's book. Yeah, that's what we'll go with.
There we go. Okay, well, like Everton's season, it's a whitewash. It is a 1-star review, so Caroline, you win 2-0.
oh my God.
The main reason she didn't like it was because it wasn't the one she ordered. She got a hideous design, and yeah, I know, a hideous design instead. But rather than send it back, she needed it because she was having removals. So she didn't want the dirt going in. So it's still trapped in dirt, but it just wasn't nice to look at.
Yeah. Does she have a picture of it? Like, does it have a design?
No. The one she ordered looked pretty nice. It had like a nice sort of honeycomb design, and welcome in the middle. But yeah, she didn't like the one that she got.
Did you say she was having orders?
She was getting something removed. Was it?
Yeah, like she was moving the house.
Was the body? Was it? It's not the bodies or anything like that dug up from the back garden.
Bad experience with this mat.
She's just stressed out and hating everything. I feel like moving is just hell. Like that mat had no chance. My book had no chance.
No. And then Christmas came and the gonks made everything better.
I'm sure right now she's in there revising all those 1-star reviews.
Wait a minute as well. Hold on, right? Christmas. I mean, reviewing something at Christmas. Who reviews a Christmas-themed product badly? I think I've been set up here, Chris.
Yeah. Scrooge.
I've been set up. This is. I'm writing to the commissioner of this game.
You just reminded me of another movie I love, Bad Santa, both the first and the second. So I own them both, and I love, like, if you're having a bad day and you put on Bad Santa, that opening monologue just, I don't know, lifts me every time. And then also, I forget, in my new book, there's a whole thing about 5-star reviews where Jo likes this woman who gives every book 5 stars because in her mind, like, there should be nuance, and it's like she's trying to be a little mysterious and like treat the book well. And he's a little, like, disgusted with that because part of it is that, like, take a fucking stand. Like, you can't, don't be such a people pleaser, like the way that when the customer is always right. So, yeah, I mean, it's more like I don't even know if what I just said, like, line for line is in there, but stars just fascinate me of, like, the way that everything we get now, we can, like, assess the value of it, like, and hold up the.
Yeah. And the ones that get me are, because you get emails where it's like, what did you think of this? And if it's a book, I haven't got to it yet. So they'll do 1 star, haven't read it yet. You're like, well, just don't reply to that email and wait until you have read it, because that's ridiculous.
And I tend to be a slow processor where, like, it just takes me a while sometimes. Like, it's never also, like, some books I tear through, some books I want to read slowly. Like, one has nothing to do with the other, like, it's just a mood. It's me and the book together, like that combination. And it's another thing I think funny that, like, I love the word unputdownable, but I'm like, some of my favorite things I started reading a few years ago, threw it aside, like, not for me, picked it up a year later, like, oh my God, I love this. And, like, sometimes, like, putting it down isn't, like, it's just of a moment or a mood. And
yeah, absolutely.
Kind of like that mug that you get and you're like, oh, if the handle was a little wider, 1 star, but then a few weeks later you get used to it, you're like, yeah, that mug's okay.
Has that happened recently?
No, but I think it's when you, like, I love when I'm procrastinating, you go on Amazon and look at something like the more the banal, the better, like paper towels, and see passionate reviews about paper towels that are like, I click on them. I want, like, a fucking paragraph that thick, like, not 2 lines. It's like the same people that when they review books and they're like, the page was bent, 1 star, like, I love the perspective, the consumer perspective. I feel like that should be a part of someone's identity of, like, this is what I'm looking for. Like,
I find it so weird that you use reviews for certain, because everything can be reviewed now, exactly as you say. I certainly use reviews for certain things like they are the gospel, and I cannot be changed, and my consumerism will be completely dictated by both the amount and the star rating. And then there's things that I would just never ever think to do. Books, for example. I think, but I don't know if that's because I'm part of the industry and all the rest of it. But things like hotels, obviously,
Yes.
and it's user ratings. It's not, it's not the industry's rating. It's the user rating that you look at. It's fascinating though, isn't it? It's absolutely fascinating. It's
It is
fascinating.
because
Everything is rated.
yeah, because I feel like hotel reviews too, I always click most recent. Like that's what I want to see. But yeah, like reviews of other things that don't, like, you're going to be staying there and sleeping there. I'm like, I want to know someone who did this last week. But if someone read the book I'm going to read, I don't really,
Exactly.
I want to read it. I want to read it.
Exactly that.
Caroline, we usually like to end on what you're reading at the moment.
Oh, well, it's sitting right here because I just started it. It's called Speech Team by Tim Murphy. It's just hysterical and wonderful, and I'm loving it. And I put it on Instagram today, and I put the title wrong. So someone corrected me in the comments. Well, really, but that's how I feel like when I get excited about something, I am like a little kid, and it's like dorky and misspelled and like all sudden,
Yeah.
And I just finished a book by Clay McLeod Chapman that's really disturbed me. So I needed this after that. Like, I like to mix it up very extremely. Like that book, I couldn't, there were things, I can't. It's called What Kind of Mother, and that's out in a while. And yeah, it's not for the faint of heart or people who are afraid of bugs. And I am one of those. Yeah. And I'm never going to this swampy river ever again. Not that I did before, but like now I'm really not. Like really, really. I tease him because he just put up this picture. That's what I love about people who write the dark stuff. Like, he put up the most sunshine picture of him with his wife and his kids. And I'm like, I just love that, like, discrepancy, like, it's just, yeah. And the beaming smiles. I'm like, you just disturbed me. You put bugs in my head and you're like out smiling in a photo booth. Like, I love that.
Fantastic.
What about yourself, Jonathan?
I actually have the new Joe Nesbo waiting for me to kick off. That's Killing Moon. And that is out, I believe, hold on, let me double check, May 25th. So I've got that through for review, and I'm very excited to be jumping into that one. So that's Killing Moon by Joe Nesbo.
Very nice. I was rather egomaniacally reading my own book because it's up for submission at the end of the month. So I was like, well, I'll just go through it on my Kindle because I've looked at it on my computer screen for so many that I just thought a different way. And I've just come back from Northern Ireland where my family live and where I'm from, and at the airport, my wife was like, "Oh, I might read a book." Oh no! Yesterday she started my book. She was like, "I'll read it, and if I spot any mistakes or whatever with fresh eyes." And then my kid wanted my phone in the airport, so I was like, "Right, well, I'm gonna have to buy a book because my wife's still on my Kindle and that." So I went into the airport.
She started reading your book on the plane while you're sitting next to her?
Yesterday on the sofa in the evening. Honestly, it's horrific.
He was talking to me last night about it, Caroline. He's saying that he was terrified, absolutely terrified.
Because
as if going on holiday with Chris McDonald isn't terrifying enough.
Do you know the movie Funny Farm?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's Chevy Chase, and he wrote a book. It's his wife's, I think it's their anniversary, and she thinks romance, and he gives her the book, and he's sitting there like telling her there are 3 laughs on the first page, and just
That's how I feel, because if she chuckles, I'm like, what is it? Is it meant to be funny? Is it not? Is it?
Are you laughing? Honestly, with me?
It's horrible.
Laughing how awful it is. That's where you automatically go to. Like you're such a liability as a writer that it's laughably bad.
Yeah.
Not you specifically. I'm talking about in general because I've loved it. That was the thing, Caroline. I did this show last week. I guested on this show last week, and we were speaking to Ellie Griffiths, and I was reading Chris's book, and I'm just about finished it, and I said that it's the best thing that he's ever written, and now I come on this time and in front of you say that it's the worst thing that he's ever that's ever been written. So there you go. That's the karmic realignment of the universe.
That's Amazon summed up in a nutshell, isn't it? So anyway, I bought Lee Child, my first Lee Child. It's very good.
What was it like to do? Were you able to read while she's sitting there reading your book? I don't know.
I was a few rows behind her. Over her head. Luckily, I was a few rows behind her. And,
that's good. Okay.
My child who wanted my phone didn't stop talking for the full hour, so I didn't get anything read. It was pointless me buying that book. But yeah, there we go.
But now you have it. There's Lee Child is good to have on hand.
There we go. And I feel like at 34 now, I should have read A Lee Child. So
when you send this book out, I feel like that is the day. Pick up that book and it will take you away. You know.
There we go.
Yeah. When
Big
you're
moment.
waiting for everyone else to say, "This is the best thing you ever wrote." Yeah.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, we'll see. Yes. Thank you so much for your time. It's been class fun. And
this is just a blast. Yes.
I'm glad. And listeners, go out and buy For You and Only You. The fourth in the series. You will love it. And we're glad that we could celebrate publication day with you today. And
I'm proud I didn't start singing Blood Brothers by Bruce Springsteen.
Well, we need a new theme tune, so you can send that along afterwards.
I'm not singing it.
Yeah. That'll bankrupt us immediately.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm sure if you're ever in the UK, we'd love to see you.
Yes, I'm determined to come back soon.
Excellent. Well, we will make sure of it. Brilliant. Thank you. And thank you, Jonathan, for stepping in. And we'll be back in the near future. Listeners, bye-bye.